Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodame Sankhye Kritante Proptani Siddhaye Sarvakarmanam Adhishthanam Tathakartha Karanam Cha Pratak Vidham Vividhascha Pratak Cheshta Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam. Shlokas 13 and 14 of chapter 18 are very, very significant to understand the principle of akartritva anusandhanam. We have seen Krishna takes up the topic of Tyaga, and in that context he elucidates three types of Tyaga: Kartritva Tyaga, Mamata Tyaga, Phalasanga Tyaga. The most important of these three is Kartritva Tyaga. Because with Kartritva Tyaga, the other two types of Tyaga follow, becomes easier. And Kartritva Tyaga also is the most difficult to comprehend as well. Akartritva, non-doership, is not easily understood. The discussion on Akartritva starts way back in the 3rd chapter. Akartritva is not something new that he takes up in the 18th chapter. In fact, Akartritva, non-doership, is fundamental to Karma Yoga. But the beauty of Krishna's exposition throughout the Gita is, as he moves on explaining Akartritva, he also expands our perspective, and our understanding of Kartritva becomes deeper and deeper and lot more clearer. And now, with 2 shlokas, Krishna gives a definitive conclusion, clarifying in totality. In the 3rd chapter, the discussion on Kartritva begins. Prakriteh kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvajaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaha miti manyate. After explaining Karma Yoga, Krishna talks about the importance. How do I perform Karma Yoga? To perform Karma Yoga, one needs to implement Akartritva. Akartritva Anusandhana is fundamental to Karma Yoga. And Krishna, therefore, in the 3rd chapter, talks about how to ascribe one's actions to the gunas of Prakriti. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaha miti manyate. The one who is deluded because of the identification of the Atman with the body starts to believe that the actions of the gunas of Prakriti are one's own. Ahankara vimudhatma. Krishna uses very harsh words. He says, the one who thinks, iti manyate, one who thinks that I am the doer is a fool. One who thinks that I do all the actions, whereas in reality the actions are because of the gunas of Prakriti. So this is the first time Krishna introduces the principle of Akartritva Anusandhana. Now, when Krishna says, when one thinks I am the doer, he is a fool, is Krishna concluding that we are not the doers? Is that the conclusion? If I am not the doer, then if we look at the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, concluding Gita, Krishna says, Yatechasi, yatechasi, hey Arjuna, yatechasi tatha kuru. Yatechasi tatha kuru, he says. After pondering over everything I have told you, yatechasi tatha kuru, do as you will, as you wish, as you desire. Then, if Arjuna is being asked to do as he desires, the same Arjuna is also being told, think you are not the doer. Then what is this? Is Krishna confusing us? Am I the doer? Am I not the doer? This is a question that started off way back in the 3rd chapter itself. Krishna is very clear when it comes to akartrutva. That is, he says, Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasaha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. It is an attitude. Think you are not the doer. Krishna is not saying you are not the doer. Ascribe your actions to the gunas of Prakriti. Essentially what Krishna is saying, you are not the sole doer. And at the same time, you are not the complete non-doer. In his own characteristic style, Krishna sometimes confuses us. You are not the sole doer here, Arjuna. At the same time, you are also not a complete non-doer. Therefore, you must ascribe all the actions to the gunas of Prakriti. Ascribing actions to gunas of Prakriti is a prerequisite, Krishna says. Only when you ascribe, then by ascribing your actions to gunas of Prakriti, you can avoid getting attached. Otherwise, without akartrutva anusandhana, one gets attached to one's actions as one's own. So Krishna prescribes therefore akartrutva anusandhana. Now, immediately, we have this question. If I am not the doer, then what is my role? What is my role in the action? Now this is where we need to understand what all goes into making of an action. There are several factors that are involved in the making of an action. Right from the 3rd chapter onwards, we see how Krishna takes us on this journey to understand what is this role of the I. Because we, by design, the I is so very powerful that any time we act, it is automatic to think that I am the one who did it. I did it. The sense of I is so very strong. The sense of I did it is so very strong that unless we understand what goes into making an action, what is the role of this I in any action, the role of the real I. When we say I, there is a real I and there is a pseudo I which is masquerading as a real I, which is the ego. The pseudo I, the ego, makes us believe that I am the doer. Whereas, what is the role of the real I? That needs to be discovered. That needs to be clearly understood. So Krishna says, Hey Arjuna, tattvavittu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayoho gunaguneshu vartante iti matva na sajjate. Iti matva na sajjate. The only way one avoids attachment to action, the one who avoids attachment to an action is tattvavit. Tattvavittu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayoho gunaguneshu vartanta iti matva na sajjate. We need to understand guna vibhaga, karma vibhaga. Guna vibhaga. Our physical body is made up of the 3 gunas of Prakriti. Our mind and our intellect are the products of the 3 gunas of Prakriti. The personalities that we manifest are products of 3 gunas of Prakriti. The content of our mind are the products of 3 gunas of Prakriti. So guna vibhaga. So every action that we perform is influenced by a particular guna. Similarly, karma vibhaga. All actions vary depending on the karmendriya that performs that action. Depending on the nature of the karmendriya, the nature of the action varies. With the eyes we see, with the mouth we talk, with the ear we hear. So the nature of the actions depends on the nature of the karmendriya. Also, the nature of the action also depends on not just the karmendriyas, also on the physical body as well. A lion acts differently, a snake acts very differently, a human being acts very differently. Depending on the embodiment, the actions that are performed also vary. And even amongst human beings, the nature of actions vary depending on the mental makeup. Guna vibhaga, karma vibhaga. So Krishna is basically saying, all the actions, guna guneshu vartante. It is the interplay of the gunas. It is the gunas interacting with the gunas. The sense organs are product of gunas, the sense objects are product of gunas. It is the interplay of these gunas, hey Arjuna. Therefore, the tattvavith, one who knows the truth, does not identify himself with the actions, does not identify with the body, and therefore does not identify with the nature of actions, with the actions performed by the body. The nature of the actions are so very different. And the tattvavith therefore realizes, just like how, we've discussed this many times before. I go to a movie and I start identifying with the various roles in the movie. And I can completely get lost. The roles that are on the screen, there is an interplay of the roles that is going on. The moment I start identifying with a role on the screen, I start to believe I am part of the drama that is going on. Similarly, the Atman starts to identify with the body, identify with the senses, and therefore identifies with the action. Thus Krishna, right in the 3rd chapter, takes up this topic of akartritva anusandhana, and this theme of non-doership continues. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavith indriyani indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. In the 5th chapter, Krishna further clarifies on the principle of non-doership. Naiva kinchit karomiti yuktaha manyeta tattvavith. Yuktaha, a karma yoga nishtha. Naiva kinchit karomiti. He says to himself, he knows that I am not the one who is doing the actions. Indriyani indriyarteshu vartanta iti dharayan. It is the indriyas, the interplay of the indriyas, the sense organs, with their respective sense objects. So, akartritva anusandhana can be easily understood with our famous analogy, the car. Ahankar, ahamkar, I am the car, I am my car. So we have discussed how this identification with the body can be easily understood by the identification that we have with the cars that we drive. Ahankar is essentially the ego which rises because of this misidentification of the Atman with the body. Now, akartritva anusandhana is to basically realize and practice the truth, the fact that I am not my car, I am also not the driver. Now, I am not my car can be easily understood. That also takes some difficulty. The greater the attachment, the greater the difficulty in distancing ourselves from the car. When we are attached, we become one with the object of our attachment. So therefore, it takes some time to grow up and then realize that I am not my car. The same thing with the body is a lot more difficult. But at least with the analogy, I am not the car is fairly easy, but then I am not the driver. How do I realize this? Why am I not the driver? I am not the driver Because once I reach home, my role as a driver ends. The moment I reach my destination, I am no longer the driver. So I am the driver as long as I am associated with the car and I am traveling towards my destination. So I am not the driver. The driver is a role that I have to play. Because on account of me needing to travel from point A to point B. Now, this understanding will get a lot more clearer in the shlokas that Krishna is going to take up now, 13 and 14. So the akartritva anusandhana, the principle of non-doership, essentially began by Krishna explaining to Arjuna as to how one should start ascribing one's actions to one's body which is made up of 3 gunas, ascribing to gunas of Prakriti, ascribing to one's body and bringing the distance between the Atman and the body. Now Krishna further takes up this topic to give us lot more clarity on this subject. Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodhame sankhye kritante prokthani siddhaye sarvakarmanam. Panchaitani mahabaho. Once again, Krishna addresses Arjuna as Mahabaho. Hey Mahabaho. Mahabaho. Able body, one with strong arms. Hey Mahabaho, with this knowledge that I am going to impart, you will transform from being a Mahabaho to a Mahavidwan, Mahavinayavan, Mahaviveki. It is important to be Mahabaho, but it is more important to be a Mahavidwan, a Mahaviveki, a Mahavinayavan. And this is the knowledge that Arjuna is going to get. A Mahabaho, Panchaitani, Mahabaho, Karanani Nibhodave, Sankhye Kritante Proktani. What is said? Sankhye Kritante. Now, Sankhya. Many commentators interpret here Sankhya as the Sankhya philosophy. Unfortunately, that interpretation will not fit in here because Sankhya philosophy is Nirishwara philosophy. Krishna here is not talking about the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya is knowledge. Knowledge of the tattvas. Knowledge of the tattva is ultimate reality. Knowledge of the ultimate reality. Sankhye krita ante. Anta. What is anta? Anta is nirnayam. Conclusion. Kritante. Sankhye. Kritante. Definitive conclusion arrived based on the knowledge of ultimate reality. Ultimate reality as revealed in the Vedas. Ultimate reality as revealed in the Vedanta. Sankhye Kritante Prokthani. Hey Arjuna, I am going to share with you what is the definitive conclusion that is arrived based on the knowledge of ultimate reality revealed by the Vedas. Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodha me Nibodha. Know from me, Arjuna. Know from me this definitive conclusion that is arrived based on the knowledge of ultimate reality revealed by the Vedas. And what is that definitive conclusion? Panchaitani Mahabaho Karanani Nibodhame. For every action, there are 5 causal factors. What we've seen throughout the Gita is how Krishna gives us that perspective that when he says we are not the only doers, the message that Krishna is giving is that when we realize, the realization that we are not the only doers is essentially means that The results of what we do are not caused by us alone. This is the important realization that we need to get. Because most often, we are always expecting a result out of any action that we perform. The result of any action is subject to several other factors. One factor, only one out of a huge network of factors is only one factor influencing the result is the action that we do. We are in an interconnected cosmos, and we are one tiny weeny part of this interconnected, interdependent cosmos, and the action that we do is just one factor amongst several factors that influence the result of an action. Now Krishna is getting into specifics. Now he says, hey Arjuna, there are 5 factors. Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodhame sankhye kritante prokthani siddhaye sarvakarmanam. Siddhaye, here siddhi is not fruition of the action. Siddhi here is successful initiation of an action, not completion. Even for initiation, he says, even for an action to be initiated, for an action to kick off, for an action to originate, any action to originate, there are multiple factors, and there are 5 principal factors. 5 principal factors affect every action, and for every action to start off, to be initiated, there are 5 causal factors. And what are those causal factors? Adhishthānam tatha karta, karanam cha pratak vidham, vividhascha pratak cheshtha, daivam chaivatra panchamam. Now, with this shloka, the akartrutva anusandhana becomes a lot more clear. The question that has been nagging us throughout 17 chapters of the Gita. Yes, I understand I am not the sole doer. I understand I have to ascribe my actions to the body, to Prakriti, to 3 gunas, and eventually to the Paramatma. But why? The answer to that why is beautifully explained in this shloka. The 5 causal factors for any action, Krishna gives them the list of these 5. Adhishthānam tatha kartha karanam cha pratak vidham. 3rd. Number 4, vividhascha pratak cheshta. 5, daivam chaiva panchamam. 5th factor is daivam. Adhishthana. What is adhishthana? Adhishthana means residence, abode, base, support, dwelling. What is the adhisthana for action? The body, the sharira. The sharira, which is the sanghata of the panchabhutas. Sanghatas chetanadritihi, Krishna says in the 13th chapter. Sanghatas chetanadritihi. Sanghata, it is made up of, sanghata is an admixture. The body which is an admixture of the panchabhutas is adhisthana. It is the body, the physical body. It is very important to realize that the Atman and the body need to necessarily partner and cooperate. Both need each other. When we ask this question, if we ascribe the ownership to the gunas of Prakriti, if we ascribe ownership to the body, then if the actions are, the doer of the actions is the body and not the Atman, then is there no accountability for the Atman? This is the question that we had right in the 3rd chapter. But Krishna also clarified that in the 13th chapter. Karyam karanakatritve hetuhu prakritiruchyate. Karyam karanakatritve hetuhu prakritiruchyate. Purushaha prakritistohi bhunkte prakritijan guna. Sukha dukkha. The sukha and dukkha are experienced by Purusha, whereas the actions are carried out by the Prakriti, the body. So, the Mukhya Karana for the actions is the body. The Mukhya Karana for experiencing is the Atman, but both need each other. The body needs the Atman to carry out the actions because the Atman has to will, and only then the body can carry out the action. The Atman needs the body to experience. Without the body, the Atman cannot experience, like the analogy of a woodcutter. Now, the woodcutter takes an axe and cuts a tree. Now, the action of cutting is done by, there are two factors here. The woodcutter and also axe. Without the axe, the woodcutter cannot cut. Without the woodcutter, the axe by its own also cannot cut. The axe has the capability of cutting but does not have the consciousness to take a decision whether to cut or not cut. The woodcutter can take the decision of cutting or not cutting but does not have the capability to cut by himself. He needs the axe. So similarly, the Atman and the body need each other for doing the actions and for experiencing the result of the actions. Adhishthanam, therefore, is the body, the physical body. Sharira is Adhisthana. Adhishthanam tatha karta. Now, how do we define karta? The Shastras give a beautiful example, definition. Karta, they say, is one who experiences the karma phala. Doesn't say the one who is the performer of actions. The experience of the results of the action is the karta. Karta, therefore, there is an accountability for the karta. Even though Krishna says, ascribe your actions to the gunas of Prakriti, ascribe the actions to your body, the accountability very much remains with the karta because it is the will of the karta which is responsible for the action. Janati, Ichhati, Yatnaha. Who is the karta? One who knows, one who wills, and one who endeavors. He is the karta. Who is the one who knows? The knower and the doer is the Atman. The Atman has Jnatritva and Kartrutva and also Bhoktrutva. We have seen this. Jnatritva, Atman is endowed with knowledge. Kartrutva, Atman has Kartrutva because otherwise the injunctions of the Shastras are of no relevance. The Shastras say you must do this, you must not do this. If the Atman is not the Karta, then what is the relevance of the injunctions of the Shastras? The Atman is the Karta, he is not the only Karta. Doing of the Atman, the Jivatma embodied being, is contributory in nature. It's not decisive, it is contributive. It contributes, it's one of the important factors. Karta, therefore, is a second causal factor. Adhishthanam tatha karta. Adhishthanam tatha karta. Karanam cha pratak vidham. Karana. Here, karana are the karmendriyas. Karmendriyas. Vak, pani, payu, pada, upasthana. The karmendriyas with the manas. The organs of action along with the manas, the mind, together is our karana. Karanam cha pratak vidham. Because depending on the nature of the karmendriya, the nature of the karma also changes. Different types of karma. So therefore, one of the causal factors, without the karmendriyas and the manas, there cannot be actions that can be executed. So therefore, the karta needs the sharira and the karmendriyas with the manas. Karanam cha pratak vidham. Vividhas cha pratak cheshta. Many times we completely forget this significant causal factor for any action. Cheshtaha. Vividaha pratak cheshtaha. What is the vividaha pratak cheshta? The cheshta here is the life force, the prana. Vividaha pratak cheshta. Fivefold. The function of prana is fivefold. The prana is the life governing force, which is the functions are fivefold in nature. Prana, apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. Pranavayu governs the function of the process of taking energy in. Not just air, breathing, even anything which goes in food, sensory perceptions, everything, the process that governs this process of energy going in, that is governed by pranavayu. Prana, apana. Apanavayu governs the function of evacuation. Everything which is not needed by the body, things which come in have to be evacuated. What is not needed has to go out. That function is governed by apanavayu. Vyanavayu, circulation of energy within the body. Samanavayu, energy comes in, needs to be assimilated. If the energy is not assimilated, then the body is not energized. Samanavayu assimilates energy. Udanavayu governs the function of communication, speech, facial expressions. So thus, this causal factor of prana is one of the most important factors. In the Upanishads, there is a very interesting anecdote which says, it seems all the faculties in the body started to compete with each other, saying, I am the most important in the body. Each of the faculties started saying, if I leave the body collapses. One after the other, they wanted to, show what is the most important. The eye left, nothing happened. The ear left, nothing happened. And eventually, when the prana left, the body completely degraded. And all the faculties realize the importance of prana. Then, prana, we also take prana for granted. And we also take our breathing for granted. The reason why our rishis lived for thousands of years is because of the kind of mastery they had over their breathing. So therefore, one of the causal factors of the 5 is the pancha pranas. Vividaha pratak cheshtha. Daivam chaivatra panchamam. Daivam. Obviously, this is also the most ignored factor as well. More ignored than prana. At least prana sometimes possibly, we feel that, when we pant, when we have congestion, we do remind ourselves there is something called prana. Daivam, somewhere deep inside, Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam. What is this Daivam? This is the Antaryami, the 5th. This is the Mukhya Karana, but the most ignored Karana. Ya Atmani Tishthan, Atmano Antaro Yamiyati. So Atmana Veda, Yasyatma Sariram, Yeshata Atma, Antaryam Yamataha. The Bhagavad Upanishad talks about the Antaryami, the Antaratma. Bhagavan pervades from within and he also controls from within. Antaryami. Kshetrajnam chapivam vidhi sarvakshetreshu bharata. Krishna in the 13th chapter clarifies. There is a kshetrajna and there is also a sarvajna who also is a co-resident, a partner inside. And therefore, the most important factor of all the 5 causal factors is the 5th factor, the Paramatma, who is the Mukhya Karana. Now, immediately one will ask, if he is the Mukhya Karana, what is the role of the Karta, Atman? And Krishna also talks about ascribing doership now to Bhagavan, to him, to Krishna. If I ascribe doership to him, once again, then as a Karta, what is the Karta's role? It is very important. Krishna clarifies this. Freedom is given to us, there is a will. Janati, Ichhati, Yatana. For all the 3, the power to know, the power to will, the power to endeavor are all fraction of Krishna's power. And these are unique endowments given to us. They are subservient to him. Our kartrutva, we have kartrutva, but our kartrutva is in his adhina. Now, we have to go back to the analogy of the car to understand this and have complete clarity. Now, until 18th chapter, whenever we discuss the analogy of the car, we said, I am not the car, I am not the driver. These are 2 important things that we need to keep telling ourselves. Why I am not the driver? I've taken up the role of the driver. I'm traveling in this car. I'm driving this car. I need to go to a destination. It is because of my association with this car, I am currently doing the role of driving. But in reality, I am not the driver. In reality, I do not have long-standing relationship with this car. This car is a tool. Sanghatas chetanadhritihi. The body is only Sanghatas chetanadhriti. It's a vehicle. This vehicle has to take me from location A to location B. And that's the purpose of the vehicle. And therefore, I have to use this vehicle to reach my destination. Now, when we drive this car and as we start become expert drivers, we are very comfortable with the car and we drive, and we are so perfect in driving. We are able to clear the signals, we are able to take the right exits, we are able to drive well every road, all kinds of obstacles. We are easily able to maneuver and drive, and we start thinking that we are actually driving the car. What we do not realize and what we have not yet seen in this analogy of the car and the driver is this car has not just one steering wheel and one set of brakes and accelerator. This car also has another steering wheel, another brake and another accelerator. And there is a real expert who is actually driving this car and braking and accelerating at the right moments without us even realizing. And we think we are cruising, we think we are succeeding when every obstacle comes in. In reality, the one who is unseen is not only navigating, not only guiding, is actually driving. And we end up thinking that it is my skill, my capability, that I am able to take this car wherever it needs to go in a fashion that I think it should be. Now, the moment I realize that the real expert to drive this car is actually sitting next to me, he is the one who is actually handling the other steering wheel with the brake and the accelerator. And then I realize that instead of me struggling, all that I need to do is to look at him and surrender to him and say, you take over the driving. You anyway have been driving all along. It is just that I did not realize it. I did not. It's not asking him to start driving. He's always been driving. He's always been accelerating at the right points. It is only I, when acceleration was needed, possibly I was putting the brake. Wherever acceleration was needed, he was accelerating, but I was pressing the brake. Wherever brake was needed, he was applying the brake and I was accelerating. So all the accidents that happened, all the penalties that I got were all because of misuse of the freedom that I had. Now I realize that whatever good happened in my travel, I have been safely traveling. All my safety, all my comfort, everything is because of this expert driver who has been steering this journey all along. What is the struggle? Why should I continue with this misidentification with the car, misidentification with my role as a driver? All that I need to do is realize that ultimately he is the driver, and when he is the driver, then the drive is going to be safe, comfortable, and I am assured of reaching the destination. And when that realization happens, ascribing doership, Ishware Katrita Buddhihi, that's the main topic of the 18th chapter, one of the main topics. Krishna therefore categorically concludes, hey Arjuna, there are 5 factors. Adhishthanam tatha karta karanam cha pratak vidham vividhascha pratak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. There are 5 causal factors for every action. And when there are 5 causal factors, of these 5, all the 5 factors are necessary for the action to start. They are all karanas. But the main karana for the fulfillment of an action and the main karana for the result of an action is the 5th karana. Paramatma, Krishna. And when this realization happens, then ascribing doership to Krishna becomes so very easy. Akartrutva anusandhana. Akartrutva anusandhana begins first by ascribing doership to gunas of Prakriti. Eventually ascribing ownership to the physical body. Ascribing doership eventually to the Paramatma who has given us the faculty of this body and also all the sense organs to be put to use for only one purpose, to serve Him. And then we also realize that the will that is being given to us is for only one purpose, is to make that one choice. We all think the will that is given to us, the unique faculty of the willpower that is given to us, is to make too many choices. In reality, the will that is endowed is to make only one choice. That one choice is to say, hey Krishna, you are my choice. And when that one choice is made, there is no need to struggle with any other choices in life. Thus, with two shlokas, Krishna clarifies on Akartritva Anusandhana, and he will further continue on analyzing the various factors that go into making the action. A brilliant exposition on the factors that drive every action so that we can practically apply these principles in our day-to-day living follows in the coming shlokas. Until then, let's continue to contemplate on the Antaryami who is not hiding from us. We have put a lid on him. All that we need to do is remove that curtain and discover the Antaryami who is waiting to be discovered. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanastu.